Some people enter your life like storms. Others arrive like quiet rain, steady, unannounced, and impossible to forget. Her name was Lily. At least that's what the nurse at St. Mary's said when I signed the volunteer form that morning in 2002. She's not from around here, they told me. Car accident, fractured ribs, mild concussion, no family listed. I didn't know then that Lily was mine, that somewhere between fate and paperwork, blood had found its way back to me. Back then, I was just a volunteer at the small county hospital in Millwood, Tennessee. 2 days a week, I'd bring tea, fold blankets, and sit with patients whose families couldn't make the trip. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me peace. After losing my husband, I'd found that caring for strangers was easier than caring for myself. When I walked into her room for the first time, the window was open. The smell of rain drifted in, soft and clean. She looked about my age, late 30s, with auburn hair tangled against the pillow and eyes that felt familiar before I could name why. She smiled weakly and said, "I'm sorry you have to see me like this." And just like that, my heart softened. For weeks, I helped her recover. I brought her soup, read her the paper, brushed her hair when she couldn't lift her arms. We never talked much about the accident. She said she was driving south to start over. No husband, no children, just the name in a suitcase that never left her bedside. But there was something about her that pulled at me, the way she hummed an old lullaby I hadn't heard since I was a girl. The same one my mother used to sing before she disappeared. I told myself it was coincidence. Small towns breed coincidences the way creeks breed frogs. One evening after visiting hours, I stayed late. She was asleep, breathing soft and even. The nurse asked me to grab a file from the desk, and when I saw it, I froze. Her birth date, April 9th, 1964. The same day as my sister's. The sister my mother gave away before I turned 2. I didn't believe it, couldn't. But that night I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot with the rain beating against the windshield and whispered, "Lord, if this is her, I don't know what to do." Because how do you look into the face of a stranger and see your own blood staring back? I told no one. Not the nurses, not the pastor, not even my best friend. I just kept showing up, bringing her tea, listening to her hum, letting fate untie its knots one quiet day at a time. Tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone who felt like home before you even knew why? A month later, when she was strong enough to walk, Lily asked if I'd come sit with her outside. The sun was warm, the sky a Tennessee blue that only shows up after weeks of rain. We sat under the dogwood tree near the parking lot, watching the cars go by. She turned to me and said softly, "Do you believe people are sent to us for a reason?" I smiled. I didn't used to, but lately, I think maybe they are. She laughed, that same small laugh my mother had, and right then, I knew. The day I knew for sure started like any other Thursday. The smell of coffee and antiseptic filled the halls. The nurses moved in quiet rhythm, and Lily was sitting up in bed, combing through the crossword I'd brought her. She looked stronger. Her hair brushed smooth, her cheeks full of color again. She said, "You always bring me the hard ones. You must enjoy watching me suffer." I laughed. "Maybe I just like seeing you think." She grinned, but there was something in her smile that day, a tremor, a softness that made me uneasy. After lunch, she asked if I'd help her go through the suitcase she'd kept by her bed. It was small, brown leather, scuffed at the corners, like it had lived many lives. She said, "I think I left some papers in here." I pulled it onto the bed, opened the latch, and froze. Inside were clothes, a tattered paperback, and a small wooden jewelry box. When she opened it, the smell of cedar filled the air, and inside, folded neatly,
was a faded photograph. 2 little girls, one in pigtails, one swaddled in a blanket, sitting on an old porch. My porch. I knew that picture. I'd seen it once before in my grandmother's album labeled only before Mama left, before we stopped saying her name, before I learned that love can sometimes mean letting go. Lily looked down at the photo, then up at me. Her voice trembled. I don't know who they are. This was just always with me. I sat down slowly. My hand shook as I touched the corner of the picture. I said, "That's me. That's me holding you." The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt alive, like the air itself was listening. She stared at me, her mouth parted, eyes wide as if the world had tilted. She asked, "What are you saying?" I think... I swallowed hard. "I think you're my sister." She didn't speak, not for a long moment. Then she laughed, one short, startled sound, and started to cry. The nurse walked in just then, looked at us both, and quietly stepped back out. I sat there holding her hand, 2 women trying to remember how to be sisters after 40 years apart. She whispered, "Mama told me once, before she died, that I had someone. She said, 'You have a sister somewhere. Look for the girl with my eyes.'" I smiled through my tears. She must have meant me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The world felt heavier, but in a holy way, like something long buried had been waiting for this moment, not to hurt us, but to bring us home. I walked out to the back porch of my little house, the air thick with summer heat and crickets. I looked up and said, "You did it, Mama. You brought her back." The next morning, I drove to the hospital early. When I got to Lily's room, she was sitting by the window, humming that same lullaby again. Only this time, I joined in. We sang it together. Soft, uncertain, and a little off-key. But I swear, for the first time since I was a child, the air around me felt like family. Tell me in the comments, have you ever found someone you didn't know you'd been missing your whole life? From that day on, I wasn't just her volunteer. I was her sister. And every moment, every coffee, every crossword, every walk down the hospital hall felt like borrowed grace. Still, part of me was afraid, because joy like that never comes without a shadow. And mine arrived a week later in the form of a phone call that would test everything we had just found. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was at home, folding laundry, the radio playing softly in the kitchen. The phone rang, that old corded one with the slightly crooked receiver, and when I picked up, I heard the nurse's voice. "Miss Evelyn, it's Lily. She's asking for you." I didn't even let her finish. I grabbed my purse, left the basket of towels half folded, and drove the 15 minutes to St. Mary's like a woman running from silence. When I reached her room, she looked pale. Her freckles almost ghosted under the hospital light. She smiled anyway. "Don't look so scared," she said. "I just fainted. They said it was nothing." But the way her voice wavered told me it wasn't nothing. She asked me to close the blinds, said the light hurt her eyes. When I did, the room dimmed, and suddenly we were 2 sisters sitting in a hush that felt older than both of us. She sighed. They ran more tests. I waited. She didn't meet my eyes. They found something in my lungs. For a second, I couldn't breathe either. She said it so softly, so steadily, like she'd already rehearsed it alone before saying it to me. "It's not good, is it?" I asked. She shook her head. "They said it's been there a while. Too long." I sat down beside her, my knees trembling. "I just found you," I whispered. "You're not allowed to leave me again." She smiled, that same small, broken smile I'd seen the first day we met. "Then don't let go this time," she said. I didn't. From that day on, I was there every morning and every night. I learned the nurses' names, helped change their sheets, brushed her hair when the treatments made it fall out in strands. When people asked if we were sisters, I said yes, without hesitation, because by then, she wasn't a secret anymore. She was my purpose. There were good days, too. We'd sit by the window when the sun poured in, talking about everything we'd missed: birthdays, first loves, family recipes. She'd tell me stories about Mama, how she used to hum while hanging laundry, how she'd braid her hair and whisper, "You have a sister somewhere in this world. One day you will find her." I'd smile and say, "She kept her word." But there were nights I'd go home and cry on the kitchen floor because I'd realized something cruel about love. Sometimes it waits for decades just to break your heart again.
Still, I showed up because that's what family does. We show up even when it hurts. Tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone knowing you were running out of time to love them? As autumn came to Millwood, the dogwoods turned red and the air grew sharp with that Tennessee chill. The hospital staff started decorating for Thanksgiving. Paper turkeys on the walls, orange garlands over the nurse's desk. Lily told me she wanted to go outside one last time before it got too cold. So I bundled her up in a knitted blanket and wheeled her to the courtyard. The light hit her hair, what was left of it, and for a moment she looked like a girl again. We didn't say much. She just whispered, "It feels like home." And maybe that's what Greece is, finding home in someone right before you have to let them go. A few days later, her breathing grew shallow. The doctor said it was time to call the family. I almost laughed through my tears. "I am her family," I said. He nodded gently. "Then you should stay." So I did. I stayed through the long, quiet hours until morning. At 4:17 a.m., she took one last breath. And just like the first time I ever saw her, she left without warning. But this time, I didn't lose her. I finally knew where she'd gone.
The morning Lily died, the world outside was painfully beautiful. The sky was streaked in pink, the same shade as the dogwoods she loved. The nurses opened the blinds quietly, and the sunlight fell across her still face. I sat there holding her hand, and for the first time in my life, I felt both full and empty, as if love had taken up every inch of me and then slipped away. They asked if I wanted to keep anything from her room. I chose her suitcase, the same worn brown leather one that brought her into my life. Inside it was that cedar-scented jewelry box, the photograph, and a note she must have written days before. "Evelyn, thank you for giving me the kind of love that feels like remembering. If Mama was right that we'd find each other again, I guess heaven just came early for me." I pressed the paper to my lips and whispered, "You found me, Lily. You did." The funeral was small, just me, 2 nurses, and a pastor who barely knew her name. We buried her in Millwood Cemetery under a magnolia tree, the same kind that bloomed outside our childhood home. After everyone left, I stayed. I ran my fingers through the soil and said, "We were only sisters for 3 months, but I'll love you for a lifetime."
And then, because grief has a strange sense of humor, it started to rain. Soft, warm Tennessee rain, the kind that sounds like forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, people kept saying how special it was that I'd helped a stranger like that. I smiled politely, but never corrected them, because explaining the truth felt too sacred for gossip. Every Sunday since, I visit her grave. Sometimes I bring fresh flowers. Sometimes I just sit and talk, the way we used to in the courtyard. I tell her about the town, the people, the way spring smells, the things she never got to see. It's funny. I used to think family was something you were born into. Now I know it's something God hands back to you when He thinks you're ready. One day, the hospital called. They were cleaning out storage and found a file. Lily's original birth record.
I drove there, palms sweating, heart pounding, as if opening it would bring her back for just a moment. And there it was, written in faded ink, Mother, Rose Whitaker. Father, unknown. Rose Whitaker. My mother's name. Her handwriting. Her secret. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt peace. Because whatever mistakes she made, she still managed to give us back to each other. If you're still here, tell me, have you ever found forgiveness where you expected only pain? 20 years have passed since then. The hospital's long gone now, turned into a medical plaza. The magnolia tree at the cemetery is taller, fuller, and every spring it blooms like she's still saying, I'm here. I still volunteer, though my hair's silver now. Sometimes I sit with patients who have no one. Sometimes they hold my hand the way Lily did. And every time I feel her there, in the kindness, in the quiet, in the simple act of showing up. Because maybe that's what love really is. Not the years you get, but the moments you refuse to waste. Last Sunday, I brought fresh flowers to her grave, yellow lilies, her favorite. The wind was soft, the sky calm, and I whispered the same words I say every time I visit. We didn't find each other in time, but we found each other in truth. And that, to me, is enough. Because here on True Life Stories, we don't just tell stories, we remember them. Subscribe, stay with us, and help the silence end, one true story at a time.